Well, hey guys, and welcome back once more, and already to another recent gaming video. And I played Until Dawn over the last couple of days. Just finished it up literally within the last 10 minutes. And with this one, I had to sit down and talk about this right now while things were still pretty fresh in my mind. And this is going to be a spoiler heavy video. I can't get around it. I just don't think that there's any way I could unless I just make this video like 2 minutes long max. But I want to talk about some stuff in this game. So there will be a lot of spoilers, and they will be coming very, very soon. I will mention exactly when, in case you do not want to know any details. But if you're just curious as to what my opinion of the game was, I didn't really care for it. I believe the term I used online a few minutes ago was a hot mess. Just a overly busy, overly jumbled, convoluted overdose on the choice and the split decision making, and it in my opinion, it did not do all of the right and good and fun things that Telltale and Don't Nod did with games like Life is Strange and The Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us and all those kind of things. So, my opinion, no. If I had to give it a numerical rating, I guess I would give it like a 4 out of 10, maybe, with no chance of me replaying that game anytime soon. Okay. So if you just wanted to know briefly why I was not down with this game, there you go. Now I'm going to get into the spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled on it, if you haven't played the game yet, then click away now, because I'm about to start talking about how things at least went down in my game, and therefore that could give you a lot of information on what might go down in yours. Okay, so I'm just going to have to kind of spell out what this game is about. The game starts off in it's like a ski lodge or whatever in some mountain state. I didn't quite catch it if it was like Colorado or something like that, or if it was Canada. It may have even been in Canada. But this group of friends are there, and they're having themselves a get together and want to have a good fun time. And it includes these two girls named Hannah and Beth, who are twin sisters. And they also have a brother named Josh. And then they have this whole smattering of friends. And the friends, for whatever reason or another, because this thing just jumps right into what it's wanting to do. No real build-up to it. It's just like, boom, here you are. It even throws you into controlling characters and making choices right off the bat. Which I know that the intro was probably a bit of a tutorial, but it gave you choice in a situation where the choices didn't really matter. But what happens is, the friends, if you can call them that, decide that they're going to pull a little prank on one of the two sisters. And they send her a note that says, hey, this one guy named Mike is into you, and he wants to see you, and come visit him. You'll be all alone and whatnot. So she goes over there to visit him in his room or in his little cabin or whatever it was. And, basically they kind of make, he kind of alludes to, he should get comfortable and maybe take off a little bit of that extra clothing she's wearing, and she starts to do that. Well, almost all the rest of the crew is there in closets or under the bed or whatever, watching, and then they come out and make fun of her and upset her greatly, and she storms out of the lodge into the wintry night. And her sister comes along right afterwards, and she's like, what did you do? And she chases after her sister, and everybody's like, oh, we're sorry. And this is a highlight of one of the big problems that I had with it. And this isn't the fault of the game. I will fully admit this. It's my fault in that I am not a big fan of horror movies, psycho slasher movies, crazy creatures and ghosts and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a big fan of those kinds of movies. This is a game made for fans of those kind of movies. This is the kind of game that's made for fans of like the Scream movies, where they're meta and they kind of break the fourth wall and they talk about the rules of horror movies. Well, this game follows those rules. So if you know something about those kinds of movies, you're probably going to see things better and pick things apart better and be able to work things out for yourself way better than I could as a person who doesn't get into that. So like I said, that's my fault, I'm sure. But I do recognize some of the things, like the whole don't run off by yourself and don't have sex and don't go when you hear a sound, don't go investigate it. When the shit has already hit the fan, just get the hell out. So the game, it plays into these things like really, really severely. So anyway, so these girls go out into the winter weather, or blizzard or whatever, and the sister's following and gets to her sister, and the others are all sad that, I'm sorry, we didn't know that this was going to happen, but they're back at the lodge or whatever. And these two girls, they kind of find themselves what they feel like is being pursued, and they end up falling off of this cliff. And in one of those things that can only happen in movies and video games, the one sister is grabbed onto a root, and she's holding her other sister with the other arm, and then this guy in this weird suit looks over, and you're like, oh my god, he's a killer, and he's gonna kill them, and he reaches his hand down, and you're like, so what is my choice? Reach up to him, or let go, or eventually fall? No, the choices were to either drop my sister, or drop us both. Well, I'm not an asshole. I have no reason to hate or dislike these two sisters, so I dropped us both. Hit the ground, crumple, break, bleeding, roll into the snowy weather, and boom, 1 year later. Game picks up a year later when the twins' brother wants to get everybody back together, come back to the lodge, honor and pay tribute to the girls who in the game storyline are now considered missing. Not dead, they look like they were snapped in half. Their bodies and bones or whatever clothes should have been found by somebody over some period of time. But instead they're listed as missing. So they decide to go up to the thing. Okay, so in reality world where I live, the first and last and only thing that I would ever say to let's go back to where these girls disappeared after what happened last year. The last place I would want to go a year later is right straight back to that place. Now, I know I'm looking at it from the gamer who knows that there's already something going down. But still, I feel like you would not go and do that. That would disrespect their memory more than anything else. Pay respects to them at home, in your lives, and whatever you're doing. And don't go back to the scene of the crime. But they do. They all get together. Okay, so here's another reality check from Reality Land where I live. Why did everybody who was getting together for this particular, remembrance, why did they all arrive at like 10 o'clock at night or after? Who does that? Who gets to wherever they're going? Every single one of them. There's like 8 or 9 people here in this game, and they all show up at the ski lodge basically at dark or after. And all of the events of this thing happen from the moments they get there one night until the next morning when the sun comes up. Also, if they were wanting to pay tribute on the 1 year mark, was it the night that they got there at 10 or 11 o'clock that was the 1 year mark, or the day that it rolls over into? Nothing is ever said about this. Maybe I shouldn't be thinking about these things or nitpicking, but it really kind of pissed me off. It was like, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm already kind of rolling into this game thinking these are some stupid situations that are transpiring here. They don't make any sense to me. I'm not allowing myself to just kind of sit back and enjoy it and suspend my disbelief. I just couldn't. It didn't make any sense. So almost immediately things start to go down. People get into situations. Well, one of the most ridiculous ones. Okay, so let me try to think about here. These are all the characters over there. There's mainly a bunch of couples. There was Matt and Emily, and then there was Mike and Jess. It just so happens that Mike is Emily's ex-boyfriend. When they were there together the year before, they were actually a couple. They broke up, and Mike got with a girl named Jess, and Emily got with their friend Matt, started dating. Then you had Ashley and Chris. They weren't a couple, but they had feelings for each other. And you have Sam and Josh. Josh being the brother of the twins. Sam basically being the main character of the game, I guess. But the reason why I say that is because Sam was portrayed by Hayden Panettiere. I'm probably getting her last name mixed up. But she of Heroes fame and Nashville and movies and other TV shows or whatever. She was the lead person. There was another character who was recognizable to me. I'll get to that in a minute. But she was kind of like the main character I felt of the game, and I guess she had some sort of a connection with Josh. So I guess, like I said, that's 8 characters that seem to all be kind of coupled up. So, anyway, almost immediately, bad things start to befall some people. And the thing I was starting to get into was Josh tries to keep the peace between the two girls who one's with Mike and one used to be with Mike, because they start arguing. So Josh says, "Hey, why don't you guys go up to the guest cabin like I was telling you about, and you guys can, we can kind of chill out for the night." This guest cabin must have been 15 fucking miles away from the lodge. Like, it takes forever for them to get there. They literally have to, go through a mine and a bunch of other stuff because the path is blocked, and there's all this crazy stuff going on. And I'm like, what? Why? Just so, I guess, the game could create all this tension and all this stuff that's going on. All this ridiculous nonsense. And that's, like I said, that's kind of where things kick off. Well, they go up there, and the two of them have not stopped talking about getting into each other's pants since we first saw them. It's weird, though, because they ended up being pretty much my favorite pair and my favorite two people in the whole thing. So, of course, in my playthrough, she dies. Well, actually, he dies at the end. I thought he was going to make it, too. But she dies, and I was like the two people who I had the most invested in, the female died really soon, and he died at the end. So it was before I could really latch on to her, she's gone. And then after I'd invested all of my, the one main character I could really say I invested any kind of real feeling for in Mike, he dies at the end. I guess it was a sacrifice, though, so it works. But I'm a guy who would like to see everybody survive, and I'm pretty sure that can happen. But you have a small room for error, and Jess died because of a sequence where she got pulled out of the cabin window right before they were going to get it on, and I thought she was dead then. I mean, literally, how do you pull a human body through a small broken window? She should have been shredded and snapped in half. But no, she was still alive, and he goes after her. And on the sequence, you have to run, and you have to. It's a quick time event game, basically. Whether you're making choices in dialogue or what you're gonna do, or when you're moving and there's action, you have to press certain buttons at the right time, and there's a small amount of time that you can do it. And if you fuck up, well, something might happen, like a guy slips off of a pipe and falls into a creek and gets up. And that small little bit of time that it took for my character to recover from that was just enough for the Jessica character to die. Pissed me off. One thing. Basically, I had to be perfect. There were there's games where they give you some leeway. In this game, there were a bunch of sequences where I screwed up and people didn't die because of it. But in that one situation, because of the one mistimed button press, a character died. Okay, so all these different characters go into their different situations that they have to do. Some of them are in the house, some of them are outside of the lodge, and some of them are outside of the lodge. And I guess this is probably the point where I should just go ahead and really crack the egg and spoil the whole game. Okay, it's set up at first, in my opinion, it was set up to look like there was like 3 main villains or bad guys. There was this clown-faced guy who seemed to be based around the ski lodge. There was this guy out in the woods who had a flamethrower, and I thought there was another character, another evil guy that was at this sanatorium. Yeah, there was a sanatorium, like a sanatorium that was closed down in the 50s on this same mountain where there was a ski lodge and a fire tower or a ranger tower and all this kind of stuff where you wouldn't think a sanatorium would be. Now, granted, it was abandoned and closed down and had been for 50 years. But the fact that there would ever be a sanatorium up in the middle of the mountains for no fucking reason was ridiculous. And there's also these mines that were there. So anyway, it looked like there were these 3 bad guy characters. At some point along the way, I was like, wait a second. I have a feeling that the clown face guy is going to be one of our cast of characters. And I also had a feeling that the flamethrower guy was actually going to be a good guy. Well, guess what? I was right on both of these accounts. The guy in the mask turned out to be Josh. The whole entirety, well, all of the shenanigans that were happening by this psycho guy, traps that were kind of like reminiscent of the movie Saw, surveillance and little clues and things that were left behind, they were all laid there by Josh, the brother of the sisters. He wanted to get revenge on his friends by scaring the shit out of them and putting them in dangerous situations, but I guess he thought they were going to be okay. And he just did it to get back at them. He even made it look at one point like he himself was disemboweled and killed in this stunt with a saw blade thing, and the character named Chris having to decide between would Josh die or would Ashley die. Well, I chose for Josh to die because I liked the Ashley character. Ashley was probably my 3rd favorite person behind Mike and Jess, and Chris was okay, but I wanted Chris and Ashley to express themselves to one another, maybe, in that mystical afterlife of the game, that they might be a couple and be together after this. So I saved Ashley. So Josh even went to this great length to make sure that there was something that would look like a body that would get sawed in half and be gory and disgusting. And like I said, we find out at one point that he is the psycho killer. A little later on in the game, we discover that the flamethrower dude actually is a good guy. He was some guy who's been on the mountain for a long, long time, and he has been keeping in check the true villain of this game, which I haven't mentioned yet. But that 3rd thing that I thought there was, I think I got mixed up, and maybe I thought I saw the Josh's clown face killer as the 3rd thing. But in all reality, there was a 3rd thing, an actual true villain and a 3rd entity between the flamethrower guy and Josh's psycho killer fake. And it was the Wendigo, like the old mythological creature, or whatever you want to call it. The mythology in the game that I learned for it was that it was basically a creature that craved human flesh. And in this game, what they said was 50 years back, during the sanatorium days, there were a bunch of miners in the mine, and they got trapped inside. And a bunch of the miners resorted to cannibalism of other miners in there. And that the cannibalism released some sort of a curse that unleashed the Wendigo and turned these people into Wendigos themselves. Okay, so whatever. But this even went so far as to say that Hannah and Beth, the twin sisters, had not died. They were actually, abandoned there basically, or unfound by the cops and everybody who came to investigate it afterwards. And they probably resorted to cannibalism or something themselves and became Wendigo creatures, or were killed by one of them for sure became a Wendigo. The other one maybe, or maybe the other one was killed and ate. Maybe one sister ate the other sister. I don't fucking know. At this point, I don't really care. I'm kind of tired of thinking about this game. At the end of my game, only 2 people survived. That was Sam, the Hayden Panettiere's character, the main character or whatever, and Chris, the guy who was kind of the dork of the group and that I didn't really care about. I wanted Ashley to survive, and I wanted Mike and Jess to survive. Well, I lost every character in the game that I had any, sympathy for or any interest in. All because a guy wanted to get revenge on his friends for playing an evil prank on his sister, and then they disappeared, and then they all came back a year later like morons, and then they got wrapped up in all this craziness of Josh's scheme, only to find out that there really was something out there that was killing people. And it's just nonsense. Okay, so here's a few problems that I had with the game. There were a lot of choices that you got to make that weren't timed. But like I said before, there were a lot of quick time events stuff where it was timed. Or there was this one that was horrible. I didn't bring the controller over here. I was going to do it. But the PS4 has a motion sensitivity to it. And there were times when the game would just be like, don't move. And you'd be like holding your controller and you would just... And it would go long enough that, especially when you're thrust into that situation, you're like, I gotta breathe. Just a little breath. Just enough to move your fingers just a little bit. Fuck. You're fucked. I'm pretty sure I lost at least 1 character, maybe 2, to the don't move thing. Bullshit, guys. That's fucked. I don't like that at all. If I'm not moving, if I'm not breathing, it's very uncomfortable for me. And then and you can't go back on these. It's not like you have a save game before this and you can go retry. The only way I could do any of that stuff over again is to start a brand new game and try again and try to make better choices and not move. Super frustrating. Super frustrating. Missed a couple of the button pushes for the regular QTE type stuff that I know affected things. Made wrong choices here and there. Made a choice that I thought was the right one in that moment where you try to read it and you try to understand it. Doesn't always work. I'm not gonna say who, but I watched somebody's video, a bigger YouTuber, one of my favorite YouTubers, and they said that this was one of their favorite games because it evolved the formula that Telltale, has kind of created, and they did things better. And they, especially other Telltale games that came out in 2015, they said it was way, way better. I beg to disagree big time. The way that they did the making of choices and those action QuickTime events were too harsh, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure you could say get good, be better at video games and all that kind of stuff. But it just wasn't for me. That was not what I was expecting out of it. I should have. Horror, movie, video game, yada, yada, yada. I should have known better. And the last thing I want to mention, this is just playing off of the stupid horror movie tropes, but... Okay, this guy was out in the woods for all this time trying to defend against the Wendigos. He knew that they were out there. He knew that they come out and hunted at night. They probably came out every night to hunt. So what I want to know is, when these cops, investigators, whatever, came to investigate these sisters, they never encountered any of this. You can't just come out to a lodge for 30 minutes and be done and say, okay, that's it. They would have had search parties out for them. Those people would have been encountering the Wendigo and being massacred, and somebody would have known about this. And if not, if you throw all that out, Josh, the guy who was the mastermind between all these sadistic traps and stuff, set up not just in the lodge, but here and there and all around, would he not have known? He couldn't have just came in one day and set up all these elaborate things. He would have been there at times when he would have encountered this stuff as well. Now, one fallback, I guess, for Josh is they had these parts in the game where you were talking to some sort of psychiatrist, and you didn't know until later in the game that it was Josh, or at least it was in his mind. He was a little overboard. He was taking a lot of medicine. He had issues even long before his sisters disappeared. So I guess maybe there was something there. Maybe he wouldn't have noticed these things. But you would have thought the Wendigos would have fucking killed him at some point. Anyway, that's the last thing I want to say about it. I don't recommend this game. I wouldn't tell it. I'm not going to stop anybody. I'm not going to say you're an idiot for playing it. But I wouldn't recommend it. If anything that I've talked about here sounds exciting or interesting to you, then go for it. If you're a horror movie aficionado, go for it. Play it. Because you'll probably understand it better than my poor little brain did. But I'm just not high on that game. So anyway, I'm afraid this stupid video is going to get chopped up automatically by my computer or my camera. So I'm going to end this here. Until dawn, not a fan. Thanks for watching, guys.